Raonaid Murray was born on January 16, 1982, the second youngest of 5 children in a close-knit family from Glenageary, County Dublin. She grew up surrounded by love and laughter, the Murray household known for its warmth and strong family bonds. At 17 years old, Raonaid was just like many other teenagers of her time. She loved music, fashion, and spending time with her friends. Those who knew her described her as bright, fun, and full of energy. A young woman on the cusp of adulthood, with her entire life ahead of her. Raonaid was a student at Holy Child School in Killiney, and she also worked part-time in the local boutique shop, Sally West, where she was popular with both her co-workers and customers. Independent and responsible, she balanced her schoolwork with her job, all while maintaining a busy social life. She had dreams of pursuing a career in fashion, a path that seemed natural given her sense of style and creativity. Her future, in many ways, looked limitless. But what stood out most about Raonaid was her kindness. Friends recall her as someone who would always listen, always offer support, and always bring light into a room. Her presence was magnetic. She made people feel seen, heard, and valued. No one could have imagined that this vibrant teenager, who embodied so much promise and potential, would be taken from the world in such a brutal and senseless way. Friday, September 3rd, 1999, began as an ordinary late summer day in Dublin. For 17-year-old Raonaid Murray, it was the start of a weekend she had been looking forward to. That evening, Raonaid met up with friends at a pub in nearby Glenageary. She enjoyed a few drinks, laughed, and chatted, just a normal night for a teenager embracing the freedom of her final school years. Friends recalled that she was in good spirits, her usual lively self. Later in the evening, she decided to leave and head home. It was a walk she had taken many times before. From the pub, she made her way back toward Glenageary. A journey that should have taken no more than 15 minutes. Shortly after midnight, Raonaid was seen walking along Silchester Crescent. It was a familiar route, quiet suburban streets she knew well. Nothing suggested that danger was waiting for her. But somewhere along that short journey home, something terrible happened. Just a few hundred yards from her house, Raonaid was attacked and brutally stabbed. Her life ended in a matter of minutes, in the very neighborhood where she had grown up. The normal, carefree Friday night had turned into the darkest chapter imaginable, not just for her family, but for an entire community that would soon be shaken to its core. In the early hours of September 4th, 1999, the quiet streets of Glenageary were shattered by a discovery no family should ever have to face. Raonaid's body was found lying in a laneway off Silchester Crescent, just minutes from her front door. She had been stabbed multiple times in a frenzied attack. The location was chilling, so close to the safety of her home, yet cruelly out of reach. It was around 12:30 a.m. when her body was discovered. Neighbors, shocked and horrified, quickly alerted the Garda. Word spread fast. In a community where violent crime was almost unheard of, the news struck like lightning. For Raonaid's family, the nightmare began instantly. One moment they had a vibrant 17-year-old daughter and sister. The next, they were plunged into a reality filled with grief, disbelief, and endless questions. When news reached the Murray household, it was as though time itself froze. For Raonaid's parents and siblings, the unimaginable had happened. Their daughter, their sister, their friend, gone in an instant, taken in a way that defied comprehension. The family were plunged into shock. Just hours earlier, Raonaid had been full of life, making plans for the weekend, laughing with friends. Now Gardaí were at their door, delivering the kind of news no family ever wants to hear. Grief consumed them, but alongside it came a relentless question: why? Why would someone target Raonaid, a teenager with no known enemies, who had her entire future ahead of her? Her siblings later spoke of the unbearable silence that fell over their home in the days after her death. Her laughter, once so constant, was gone. Her bedroom, once a safe haven, became a painful reminder of everything they had lost. For her parents, the heartbreak was immeasurable. No mother or father expects to bury their child, let alone under such violent circumstances. The Murrays would spend years searching for answers, clinging to hope that justice would one day come. But in those first days after her murder, all they could do was endure the weight of their loss, a nightmare from which there would be no waking. The murder of Raonaid Murray sent shockwaves through Dublin and beyond. This was not just another crime. It was the brutal killing of a 17-year-old schoolgirl in a quiet suburban area, a place where families felt safe. The Garda launched one of the largest investigations Ireland had ever seen. In the first weeks alone, officers interviewed over 1,000 people, taking hundreds of statements, knocking on doors, and retracing Raonaid's final steps. Every detail of her movements on the night of September 3rd was examined, every possible lead pursued. The laneway where Raonaid was attacked became the center of forensic work. Detectives searched for any trace, fingerprints, DNA, fibers, that might identify her killer. But despite the scale of the investigation, the evidence was frustratingly scarce. Appeals went out across the media, with Garda urging anyone who had seen Raonaid that night, or anyone acting suspiciously in the area, to come forward. They believed somebody knew something, that there were answers hidden among the silence of the community. Yet even as the investigation widened, no clear suspect emerged. There was no sign of robbery, no clear motive, and no weapon recovered. What Gardaí were left with was a mystery, and a dangerous sense that Raonaid's killer was still out there. As Gardaí pieced together Raonaid's final movements, witnesses began to report something unusual. Several people claimed they had seen a woman in the area that night, a figure who seemed out of place and who may have crossed paths with Raonaid shortly before the attack. Descriptions varied. Some said she was young, perhaps in her 20s, with long blonde hair. Others remembered her as anxious, agitated, or even aggressive in her manner. What stood out most was the timing. This woman was spotted in the very area where Raonaid was murdered, around the exact time of the attack. Speculation quickly spread. Could this woman have been the killer? Was she connected to Raonaid in some way? Or was she simply a passerby who had seen something important but never came forward? Despite repeated appeals, the mysterious woman was never conclusively identified. Over the years, Gardaí continued to raise her presence as a vital piece of the puzzle, suggesting she may have held the key to what happened that night. But without answers, she became a shadowy figure in the story, part suspect, part witness, part ghost, forever tied to the unanswered question of who killed Raonaid Murray. As the investigation into Raonaid Murray's murder deepened, Gardaí followed countless leads. Yet with no clear evidence and no confirmed suspect, theories began to take shape, each one raising more questions than answers. One line of inquiry focused on the possibility of a random attack. Could Raonaid have crossed paths with a stranger, someone drifting through Dublin that night, who struck without warning or motive? Gardaí looked closely at known offenders, including violent drifters and individuals with histories of knife crime. Another theory pointed towards someone closer to home, that Raonaid may have known her killer. Investigators considered whether the attack had been personal, perhaps rooted in jealousy, anger, or a hidden conflict. But those who knew her struggled to believe it. Raonaid was well liked, with no obvious enemies. The mysterious blonde woman, seen by witnesses near the scene, remained a haunting possibility. Was she the killer? A witness who fled in fear? or merely an innocent passerby whose identity has never been uncovered. Over the years, speculation also connected Raonaid's murder to other unsolved cases in Ireland. Some believed a serial offender could have been at work, while others dismissed the idea as coincidence. Despite all the theories, none have ever been proven. No one has ever been charged. And for every possibility raised, there is still one agonizing truth. The person who killed Raonaid Murray continues to escape justice. The murder of Raonaid Murray sent ripples far beyond the quiet streets of Glenageary. Almost overnight, her face was on every newspaper front page, every television bulletin, every radio broadcast across Ireland. The public were horrified. A 17-year-old girl had been brutally killed just minutes from her own front door, in a neighborhood where violence was almost unheard of. The sense of fear was overwhelming. Parents worried for their children, young people looked over their shoulders, and the safety of suburban Dublin was suddenly questioned. Candlelit vigils were held in Raonaid's memory, and the media covered every development in the investigation. Garda issued repeated appeals, using the press to reach anyone who might hold even the smallest detail. They stressed that no piece of information was too minor, that a memory, a face, or a sound from that night could make the difference. But as weeks turned into months, and months into years, frustration began to grow. The coverage continued, but the answers never came. Every anniversary of Raonaid's death brought fresh headlines, new appeals, and another reminder of how little progress had been made. For the Irish public, Raonaid became more than a victim. She became a symbol of lost innocence, a reminder that justice delayed is justice denied, and that even the quietest of places can hide the darkest of crimes. For Raonaid Murray's family, every day was a reminder of the daughter and sister they had lost, and of the justice that never came. Despite the huge investigation, despite the countless interviews and renewed appeals, the case remained unsolved. Leads would surface, suspects would be questioned, but time and again, nothing concrete emerged. The frustration was crushing. For Raonaid's parents and siblings, the pain never faded. Birthdays came and went, Christmases passed, but there was always an empty chair, an absence that could never be filled. Her friends, too, carried the burden of her loss, moving into adulthood without the girl who had once been such a constant in their lives. Over the decades, Garda have never closed the file. They continue to treat Raonaid's murder as an active investigation, appealing again and again for fresh information. Technology has advanced and DNA testing has improved, giving hope that one day a breakthrough might arrive. But as the years stretch on, the silence feels louder. A killer still walks free, and a family still waits for the answers they deserve. The long road without justice has become its own kind of cruelty, one that ensures Raonaid's story remains not just a tragedy, but an open wound. More than 2 decades have passed since the night Raonaid Murray's life was stolen, yet her memory endures. She is remembered not for the manner of her death, but for the brightness of her life, a teenager full of laughter, kindness, and promise. For her family, every appeal, every anniversary, and every headline has carried the same message. Raonaid must never be forgotten. They have spoken with courage and heartbreak, reminding the world that behind the unsolved case is a girl who should have grown into a woman, with dreams to chase and a life to live. Gardaí continue to issue appeals, urging anyone with information to come forward. Even the smallest detail, they say, could be the key to unlocking the truth. Raonaid's case remains open, active, and waiting for the piece of evidence that could finally bring her killer to justice. But beyond the investigation, there is the legacy of a young woman whose life touched so many. Friends, family, and strangers alike remember her not as a victim, but as Raonaid, a daughter, a sister, a friend. Her story is a wound that Ireland still carries, yet it is also a call a call for truth, for accountability, and above all, for justice. Justice for Raonaid Murray.
It is 20 years since the death of our daughter. Raonaid was brutally murdered as she was making her way home on the night of the 3rd of September 1999. With her dying breath, she struggled to finish that journey, but died within a short distance from home. Our beautiful child died on the pavement, with no loving, caring person there to help or comfort her. Recently, we were looking through some of Raonaid's things and glimpsed again the young woman our child was becoming. There was still that beautiful, fresh innocence of youth on the threshold of adulthood, with all the excitement, wonder, and possibility that brings with it. For a brief moment, she was ours again, without this horrific shadow hanging over her. Raonaid's killer is free. That freedom mocks what should have been Raonaid's life, and mocks the horror of her death. To her killer we say, come out from the shadows and own up to what you have done. Do the right thing and confess your crime. To this day there is no prime suspect. It's 20 years since Raonaid was murdered, but to us her awful death is still vivid in our minds, and we feel the pain of her loss every day. We feel that the memory of that time will still be vivid for others as well. The Gardaí have assured us of their continuing commitment to bring Raonaid's killer to justice, but they need your help. We are appealing for anyone with information that could be relevant to the inquiry to come forward with it to the Gardaí. At the start of the investigation, there were reports of sightings of people who were in the area at the time of Raonaid's murder. Some of these people have never come forward, and we ask them now to contact the Gardaí. We ask anyone who may have as yet undisclosed information to give that information to the Gardaí. Help us find Raonaid's murderer. Time has not lessened our sense of grief and loss, but sent it deeper and made it more profound. Raonaid died alone and frightened. Her killer is free. For Raonaid's sake, help find her murderer and get the justice for her that she deserves. Please help us by coming forward now. On behalf of Raonaid's mother Deirdre, her brother Daniel, her sister Sarah, and myself, her father Jim, thank you.